She collapsed on the kitchen floor. Her 6-year-old son mistakenly dialed a wrong number, but turned out to be her billionaire CEO ex who abandoned her while pregnant. Crash. The wine glass exploded against the kitchen tile, red liquid spreading like blood across white porcelain. Julia's knees buckled. Her vision blurred. The counter edge bit into her palm as she fought to stay upright. "Mummy?" 5-year-old Caleb dropped his crayon. His coloring book, half-finished dinosaurs in bright green, slid off the table as he scrambled toward her. Julia's chest constricted. Each breath felt like drowning. The room tilted sideways, walls closing in, and suddenly she was falling. Thud. Her body hit the floor, eyes rolled back. Stillness. "Mommy!" Caleb's voice cracked, high and desperate. He shook her shoulder once, twice. Nothing. Her face was paper white, lips slightly parted, completely lifeless. Panic flooded his small chest. What do grown-ups do when something's wrong? Call someone. But who? His tiny fingers fumbled for her phone on the counter. The screen was too bright, too confusing. Numbers he didn't understand. But their one name lit up differently from the rest. A name Mummy sometimes whispered when she thought he wasn't listening. Ryan. Caleb's thumb pressed the green button. Ring. Ring. 37 floors above Manhattan. Inside the glass-walled corner office of Sterling Global, Ryan Cole stared at his buzzing phone. The number made his blood freeze. He hadn't seen those digits in 6 years. Not since the night Julia walked out of his life, taking his heart with her. His hand hovered over the device, trembling slightly, a weakness he'd never allow his board members to witness. Every logical instinct screamed, "Don't answer," but something deeper, something he'd buried beneath years of ruthless business deals and sleepless nights, made him swipe right. "Hello?" His voice came out sharper than intended, defensive walls already rising. Silence. Then a small, broken whimper that shattered every barrier he'd built. "Help me!" The voice was tiny, scared, unfamiliar yet somehow achingly familiar. "Mommy won't wake up." Ryan's pen dropped from his fingers, clattering against the mahogany desk. The merger documents he'd been reviewing scattered to the floor. His entire empire, billions of dollars, hundreds of employees, international deals, suddenly meant nothing. "Who is this?" His voice gentled instantly, instincts he didn't know he possessed taking over. "I'm Caleb." The child's words came between hiccuping sobs. "Mummy's not moving. She fell down and now she's just laying there." Caleb. The name hit Ryan like a freight train. Julia had never mentioned a child, never mentioned anyone in her life after their explosive breakup. But this voice, this desperate little boy, something about him felt like looking into a mirror from 30 years ago. "Where are you?" Ryan was already moving, grabbing his coat, motioning frantically to his assistant through the glass partition. "Home. In the kitchen. There's glass everywhere, and Mommy's eyes won't open and I don't know what to do." The last words dissolved into panic. "Listen to me, Caleb." Ryan's voice became steady, commanding the same tone that closed billion-dollar deals, but softer now, protective. "I'm coming to help. Don't touch the glass, okay? Stay right there with your mum." He was in the elevator before the call ended, pressing the button for his private garage. His hands shook as he speed-dialed his personal physician. "Dr. Martinez?" "Emergency house call." Now. The drive to Brooklyn felt endless. Ryan's Ferrari flew through traffic, his mind racing faster than the engine. A child. Julia had a child. How old did the boy sound? 4? 5? The math made his stomach clench. 6 years since their relationship imploded. 6 years since he'd chosen his company over the woman he'd loved more than breathing. 6 years since she'd walked away, telling him she couldn't live in the shadow of his ambition anymore. What if? No. He couldn't let himself think it. Wouldn't dare hope. But as he screeched to a halt outside Julia's modest apartment, building a place he'd driven past exactly once in all those years, just to torture himself, his hands were shaking again. The front door was unlocked. Caleb must have opened it, waiting. Ryan took the stairs 3 at a time, Dr. Martinez close behind with his medical bag. Apartment 3B, the door stood ajar. He pushed it open and froze. There, unconscious on the kitchen floor, was Julia. Still beautiful, still the woman who'd haunted his dreams for 6 years, but thinner now, fragile in a way that made his chest ache. And beside her, kneeling on the tiles, was a little boy with dark hair and worried eyes. Eyes that were unmistakably Ryan's own. The room went silent, except for the sound of Ryan's world completely falling apart. Caleb looked up at this tall stranger who'd come to save his mother, innocent trust shining on his face. "Are you Ryan, the one Mummy talks to in her sleep?" The question landed like a physical blow. Ryan's knees nearly buckled as the truth crashed over him like a tidal wave. This wasn't just Julia's child. This was their child. The son he never knew existed was staring at him with eyes that mirrored his own, waiting for the father who'd been absent for 5 years to finally come home. But how did two people who clearly belonged together end up so broken apart? What could destroy a love strong enough to create something so beautiful? Well, quickly hit that subscribe button and tell us what time and country you're watching from. It makes me know it's real people, real family members, watching my stories, and I feel closer to you as a family while narrating these stories. Comment present if you're here with us today, and please don't leave our story in the middle. It hurts our family's growth when you do so. Now, get comfortable, and let me take you back to how Julia's story began on that sunny Tuesday afternoon, 6 years earlier. The champagne bubbles danced in crystal glasses as Julia pressed herself against Ryan's chest, both of them breathless with excitement. His tie hung loose around his neck, shirt sleeves rolled up. He looked like a warrior who'd just conquered kingdoms. "We did it," he whispered into her hair, voice thick with disbelief. "The Henderson account. $12 million, baby." Julia pulled back to study his face. Even in victory, she could see the hunger there, not satisfaction, but the need for more. Always more. "You did it," she corrected, her fingers straightening his collar with tender precision. "I just believed in you when everyone else thought you were crazy." Their Manhattan apartment felt like a palace that night. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city Ryan was determined to own piece by piece. Julia had decorated it with warmth, soft throws, family photos, plants that somehow survived despite their chaotic schedules. Her touch made the sterile space feel like home. Ryan spun her around the living room, both laughing like teenagers. When he set her down, his eyes grew serious. "This is just the beginning, Jules. Next year I'll make partner. Then we'll start our own firm, build something that lasts." Julia's smile faltered for just a moment. "What about building something that matters? Money matters, security matters, making sure you never have to worry about anything again that matters." She kissed him then, tasting ambition on his lips. Sweet and intoxicating, but with an edge that made her stomach flutter with something that wasn't quite excitement. 3 months after that night, Julia sat cross-legged on their bed, surrounded by Ryan's case files and empty coffee cups. The clock read 11:47 p.m. again. "The dinner's cold," she said when he finally stumbled through the door, phone still pressed to his ear. "Tell Jameson I don't care if it's midnight in Tokyo. Get him on the line." Ryan covered the phone, mouthing sorry to her. "5 more minutes, I promise." Julia nodded, understanding as always. She reheated his plate, set it on the table with fresh flowers she'd bought that morning, waited. An hour passed. Then 2. When she finally found him, he was asleep at his desk, head pillowed on financial reports. Julia draped a blanket over his shoulders and kissed his temple. "I love you too," she whispered to his sleeping form, then went to bed alone. The pattern became their new normal. Ryan climbing higher, working later, traveling more. Julia anchoring their home, keeping their life together while he chased his dreams. She told herself it was temporary. Success required sacrifice. She'd known what she was signing up for when she fell for the ambitious kid from Queens who talked about changing the world. But late at night, when the apartment felt too big and too quiet, Julia wondered if she was disappearing a little more each day. "You're the only thing keeping me sane," Ryan would tell her when he crashed into bed at dawn, pulling her against his chest. "Promise me you'll never give up on us." "Never." she'd whisper back, meaning it with every fiber of her being. The pregnancy test showed 2 pink lines on a Thursday morning in October. Julia stared at it for 10 minutes, hands trembling. Joy and terror warred in her chest. A baby. Their baby. The family they'd dreamed about during lazy Sunday mornings that had become increasingly rare. She pressed the test against her heart, already imagining Ryan's face when she told him. Maybe this would change everything. Maybe becoming a father would remind him what truly mattered. For the first time in months, Julia felt hope blooming in her chest. But that hope began to crack 3 weeks later. Ryan burst through the door at midnight, adrenaline crackling around him like electricity. Another deal closed. Another mountain climbed. The pregnancy test sat hidden in Julia's jewelry box, waiting for the right moment, a moment that never seemed to come. "Where were you?" Her voice was eerily calm. "The Thompson account. I told you I'd be late. You told me you'd be home by 8, for dinner with my parents. They flew in from Oregon to see us." Ryan's face went blank. He'd forgotten completely. "Jules, I'm sorry. The deal was exploding and I couldn't leave. You know how important this account is. More important than us?" The words came out sharper than intended. "That's not fair. Everything I do is for us. For our future." Julia stood slowly, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach where their secret grew. "What future, Ryan? You're never here. I'm like a ghost haunting our own apartment. You're being dramatic." "Am I?" Her voice rose. "When's the last time we had dinner together? When's the last time you asked about my day, my dreams, my feelings about anything?" Ryan's jaw clenched. "You knew who I was when we met. You knew my goals. I thought I was one of your goals." Her voice cracked. "I thought we were building something together." "We are." "No, Ryan. You're building an empire. I'm just scenery. Something pretty in the background of your success story." The silence that followed was deafening. Julia could see his mind already calculating, strategizing, treating their relationship like another deal to close instead of a love to nurture. Finally, Ryan's voice turned cold. "You don't expect me to apologize for wanting to give you everything." "I don't want everything." Julia's voice dropped to a whisper. "I just want you." But looking at his face, really looking, she saw the truth that shattered her heart into a million pieces. He would never choose her. Not over the next deal, the next client, the next rung on his ladder to nowhere. And suddenly, the secret growing inside her felt less like hope and more like a burden she couldn't bear to share. "You love your empire more than you could ever love me," she whispered. Ryan opened his mouth to deny it, but the words died in his throat, because they both knew she was right. Julia pressed her hand against her stomach one last time, protecting the life there from a father who would never choose them anyway. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, and walked out, not just from his house but from his life forever. In the silence that followed, Ryan stared at the empty apartment and wondered why victory suddenly tasted like ash in his mouth. He never knew that Julia carried his child into the night, or that she made a promise to her unborn baby as tears streamed down her face. "He'll never hurt you the way he hurt me. I'll make sure of that." Present day, morning of the crisis. Now, 6 years after she walked away, 6 years of running, which could wear down even the strongest heart. Julia Carter, she'd legally changed back to her maiden name within a month of leaving, stood at the cracked bathroom mirror of her Brooklyn apartment, applying concealer under her eyes. The dark circles had become permanent fixtures, badges of honor from a life lived on 3 hours of sleep. "Mommy, can I have pancakes?" Caleb's voice drifted from the kitchen, sweet and innocent. "Cereal today, baby. Mummy's got to get to work early." She caught her reflection, wincing. Another promise broken. Another disappointment added to the growing list of things she couldn't give her son. The waitressing job at Tony's Diner started at 6 a.m. The bookkeeping gig for the corner market began at 8 p.m. Somewhere between serving coffee to construction workers and balancing receipts by lamplight, Julia tried to be the mother Caleb deserved. Most days, she felt like she was failing. Meanwhile, 37 floors above Manhattan, Ryan Cole stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city wake up beneath him. His reflection stared back perfectly, pressed shirt, Italian tie, success written in every sharp line of his face. Sterling Global had grown beyond his wildest dreams. Fortune 500, international offices, a billion-dollar empire built brick by brick from the ashes of his broken heart. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd achieved everything he'd once thought he wanted. So why did victory taste like dust every single morning? His assistant knocked. "Mr. Cole, the Tokyo investors are holding on line 1. Tell them 5 minutes," Ryan replied. But his eyes stayed fixed on the city below, wondering if somewhere in those 8 million souls, Julia was watching the sunrise too. Back in Brooklyn, Julia's hands shook slightly as she poured Caleb's cereal. The stress was getting worse, headaches that felt like hammers, dizzy spells that came out of nowhere, chest pains that stole her breath. She couldn't afford a doctor, couldn't afford to be sick, couldn't afford to be anything other than strong. "Mummy, tell me about my daddy again," Caleb said, swinging his legs from the kitchen chair. Julia's heart clenched. The same question every few weeks, delivered with 5-year-old persistence. "What do you want to know, sweetheart? Is he tall like Tommy's dad? Does he have brown eyes like me? Why doesn't he live with us?" Each question was a knife twist. Julia had prepared answers, gentle lies mixed with careful truths. "He's very tall. And yes, you have his eyes. He lives far away because sometimes grown-ups can't be together, even when they love their children very much." Caleb nodded solemnly, as if this made perfect sense to his young mind. "Do you think he misses me?" The question nearly broke her. "I think he would love you so much if he knew you. If he knew you existed." The words she never said aloud. At Sterling Global, Ryan's morning continued its predictable rhythm. Board meetings, conference calls with London, merger documents that needed his signature. The machine of success grinding forward, demanding constant feeding. But in quiet moments, waiting for elevators, signing contracts, reviewing quarterly reports, his mind wandered to places it shouldn't go. A laugh that sounded like wind chimes. Hair that caught sunlight like spun gold. The way she'd believed in him when he barely believed in himself. He'd hired 3 private investigators over the years. All had come back empty-handed. Julia had vanished as completely as if she'd never existed, leaving only the echo of her absence in every corner of his life. His desk drawer held secrets his empire would never know about. Behind the Mont Blanc pens and business cards sat a single photograph, Julia laughing at some long-forgotten joke, her eyes bright with happiness he'd somehow managed to destroy. Some nights, he stared at that picture and wondered what would have happened if he'd chosen differently, if he'd come home for dinner, if he'd remembered what really mattered. But regret was a luxury successful men couldn't afford. The first threatening letter had arrived 3 weeks ago, slipped under Julia's apartment door like a poisonous snake. "I've been watching you. You can't hide forever." Block letters, cheap paper, no signature, no return address. Julia had thrown it away, telling herself it was probably a prank or a case of mistaken identity. The second letter came a week later. "Your boy is beautiful. He looks just like you." That one made her hands shake for hours. Someone was watching Caleb. Someone knew their routine, their faces, their lives. The third letter arrived yesterday morning. "You think you're safe in your little world. You're not. I know where you work, where he goes to school. It's time to pay for what you did." Julia had barely slept since. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every stranger's glance felt like surveillance. But what could she do? Call the police with no evidence? Move again with no money? She was trapped in a cage of her own making, and someone was rattling the bars. At 2 p.m., Ryan's assistant brought him lunch he wouldn't eat. At 3 p.m., he closed a deal worth $50 million with the same enthusiasm he'd show for buying coffee. At 4 p.m., he stared out his window and wondered why success felt so much like prison. His phone buzzed with text messages from women whose names he could barely remember. Invitations to charity galas where he'd smile and shake hands and pretend to care about causes that meant nothing to him. The penthouse waited for him, 5,000 square feet of imported marble and designer furniture. A palace fit for a king with no kingdom that mattered. Some nights, he stood on his balcony, 40 floors above the city, and imagined he could see Julia somewhere in the lights below. Imagined she was happy. Imagined she'd forgiven him for being the man she'd needed him not to be. Other nights, he just imagined jumping. As evening fell over Brooklyn, Julia tucked Caleb into bed and kissed his forehead, breathing in the sweet scent of childhood that made every struggle worthwhile. "I love you, baby." "Love you too, Mummy. Will you sing the song?" She sang softly an old lullaby her mother had sung, now passed down to another generation. Caleb's eyes grew heavy, his breathing deepened, and for a moment, Julia let herself believe everything would be okay. In his dreams, Caleb saw a tall man with kind eyes who looked just like him. In her dreams, Julia ran through empty streets, always being chased by shadows she couldn't escape. 40 miles away, Ryan fell asleep at his desk again, surrounded by contracts and quarterly reports, dreaming of a woman whose love he'd traded for an empire that couldn't love him back. Neither of them knew that tomorrow, a child's frightened voice would bridge the gulf between their separate worlds, forcing them to confront the choices that had torn them apart and the love that had never really died. The city hummed around them, 8 million people living separate lives, unaware that fate was about to collide two broken hearts in the most unexpected way. Time was running out for running away. Now present day, just after Caleb's call, Ryan's Ferrari screamed through Brooklyn's streets like a missile seeking its target. His hands gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white, Caleb's terrified voice echoing in his mind. "Mummy won't wake up." 6 years of buried emotions crashed over him in waves. Fear, rage, desperate, clawing need to reach her in time. Behind him, Dr. Martinez clutched his medical bag, probably questioning why he was racing through traffic at breakneck speed for a woman his billionaire client claimed not to know. Ryan knew the address by heart. He'd memorized it years ago when the first private investigator had found nothing but shadows. He'd driven past exactly once, torturing himself with glimpses of a life he'd destroyed. Now, as he double-parked outside the weathered brick building, his chest felt like it might explode. 3 flights up, door 3B. The hallway smelled like old cooking oil and broken dreams. This was where Julia lived, where she'd raised their... No, not yet. Don't think it yet, he thought to himself. The apartment door stood slightly open. Ryan pushed through and stopped breathing. The scene before him was a masterpiece of devastation painted in domestic chaos. Shattered wine glass scattered across white tile like crystallized tears. A coloring book abandoned mid-dinosaur. Crayons rolled under the kitchen table. And there, in the center of it all, Julia. She lay crumpled on the floor, one arm stretched toward where she'd tried to catch herself. Her face was porcelain pale, lips tinged with blue. She looked smaller than he remembered, fragile in a way that made something feral roar to life in his chest. Beside her knelt a little boy with dark hair and Ryan's own storm-gray eyes. The air left Ryan's lungs in a rush. 5 years old, maybe 6. The math was simple, devastating, undeniable. This child, this beautiful, terrified child, was his son. "Are you the man from the phone?" Caleb's voice was small but steady, brave in the way children learn to be when the adults in their world fall apart. Ryan's voice came out like gravel. "Yes, I'm Ryan." "She won't wake up," Caleb whispered. And Ryan heard his own childhood terror, echoed in those words the helplessness of being small in a world of incomprehensible adult disasters. Dr. Martinez swept past them, professional instincts taking over. "How long has she been unconscious?" "I don't know," Caleb said. She made a scary noise and then fell down. Ryan knelt beside his son, and felt the world tilt on its axis. "You did good calling me, buddy. You were very brave." Caleb's eyes searched his face with heartbreaking intensity. "Are you my daddy?" The question hit harder than any business rival's attack, any hostile takeover, any financial crisis he'd ever navigated. Ryan's throat closed completely. "Let's take care of your mom first, okay?" Dr. Martinez worked quickly, checking pulse, blood pressure, responsiveness. His diagnosis came in clipped medical terms that Ryan translated into rage. Severe exhaustion, malnutrition. Her body's been running on empty for months. When did she last eat a full meal? Ryan looked to Caleb, who shrugged. She always says she's not hungry. She gives me the good stuff. The good stuff. Like there wasn't enough food for both of them. Ryan's hands clenched into fists. 6 years. She'd been struggling for 6 years, working herself to death, while he lived in luxury 40 miles away, never knowing his son existed, never knowing she needed him. Will she be okay? Caleb's voice wavered, and Ryan saw his own desperate need reflected in those familiar grey eyes. She's going to be fine, Doctor, Martinez said gently. But she needs rest, proper nutrition, and less stress. I'm setting up an IV to get some fluids and nutrients into her system. As the doctor worked, Ryan found himself studying every detail of Caleb's face, the stubborn set of his jaw, Julia's, the way his eyebrows drew together when he worried, Ryan's own expression staring back at him from his childhood photos. This was his son, his child. 5 years of bedtime stories, scraped knees, first words, first steps, all missed, all stolen by pride and silence and the terrible choices they'd both made. Julia's eyelids fluttered first. Then, a soft moan escaped her lips. Caleb scrambled closer. "Mummy, Mummy, wake up!" Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first. Then she saw Caleb's worried face and tried to sit up. "Baby, are you okay? Did you get hurt?" "I'm fine, Mummy, but you fell down and wouldn't wake up, and I called him like you taught me for emergencies and—" "Called who?" Julia's voice was barely a whisper. Caleb pointed proudly. "Ryan, the one from your phone." Julia's gaze followed his finger and found Ryan kneeling beside her kitchen floor. 6 years collapsed into a single devastating moment. She looked exactly as beautiful as his memories, but worn thin by struggles he should have shared. Her eyes, those incredible blue eyes that had haunted his dreams, went wide with shock, then narrowed with something that looked like betrayal. "You." The word came out like an accusation. "Julia." Her name felt rusty on his tongue, like a prayer he'd forgotten how to say properly. She tried to sit up again, and Dr. Martinez gently pushed her back down. "Easy. You've been unconscious for 20 minutes. Let the IV do its work." That's when Julia noticed the needle in her arm, the medical equipment, the stranger treating her like a patient instead of a person who couldn't afford medical care. "I can't pay for this." Panic crept into her voice. "I don't have insurance. I can't." "It's handled," Ryan said quietly. Julia's eyes flashed with fury that made his chest ache with recognition. There was the fire he'd fallen in love with, still burning, even after everything. "I don't want your charity." "It's not charity. It's—" Ryan's eyes flicked to Caleb, who was watching their exchange with the intensity of a child trying to decode adult mysteries. "We need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about." Julia's voice gained strength with her anger. "You need to leave. Now." "Mommy, why are you being mean to the nice man?" Caleb's confused voice cut through the tension. "He came to help when you wouldn't wake up." Julia's resolve wavered as she looked at her son. Her hand moved protectively to his shoulder, and Ryan saw the truth in that gesture. She would do anything, sacrifice anything, to protect this child, their child. "Why didn't you tell me?" Ryan's voice was barely controlled, 6 years of questions compressed into 4 words. Julia's chin lifted in defiance that cost her visible effort. "He's mine. He's ours." Ryan's tone brooked no argument. "Look at him, Julia. Really look at him." She did look at Caleb's grey eyes, at the stubborn set of his jaw, at features that were undeniably a blend of both parents. Her defiance cracked slightly. "You made your choice 6 years ago," she whispered. "Your empire was more important than family. That hasn't changed." "Everything's changed." Ryan's voice was rough with emotion. "Everything." Caleb looked between them, picking up on undercurrents he was too young to understand. "Are you fighting?" "Mummy doesn't like fighting." The innocent question shattered the tension temporarily. Julia's hand smoothed over Caleb's hair. "We're just talking, sweetheart." But Ryan could see the exhaustion in every line of her body, the way she struggled to maintain her strength even now. She was fighting a war she couldn't win alone, and her stubborn pride was the enemy. "You're coming with me," he said quietly. Like hell I am. Language, Dr. Martinez murmured with a small smile, nodding toward Caleb. Julia flushed, but her defiance remained. We're fine on our own. Are you? Ryan's voice was gentle but relentless. When's the last time you ate a full meal? When's the last time you slept 8 hours? When's the last time you didn't worry about keeping the lights on? Each question was a direct hit. Julia's eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. That's not your problem. It is now. Ryan stood, decision made. Pack whatever you need. You're both coming home with me. This is our home. Ryan looked around the tiny apartment at the cracks in the walls, the second-hand furniture, the empty refrigerator visible through the open kitchen door. Then he looked at Caleb, who deserved so much more than survival. No, Ryan said quietly. This is where you've been hiding. Home is where family takes care of each other. And for the first time in 6 years, Ryan Cole was ready to put family first. 2 hours later, at Ryan's penthouse, the elevator ride to the 40th floor passed in tense silence. Julia clutched Caleb's hand while he pressed his nose against the glass, watching the city shrink below them. Ryan stood rigid in the corner, his mind racing through logistics, security protocols, staff instructions, how to explain the sudden appearance of a family he'd never mentioned. When the doors opened into his penthouse, Caleb's gasp echoed through the marble foyer. Whoa, is this where you live? Ryan's throat tightened. Yeah, buddy. This is home. Julia's expression remained carefully blank as she took in the imported Italian marble, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the artwork worth more than most people's houses. Ryan saw it through her eyes, cold, sterile, a monument to success without soul. Caleb needs somewhere to sleep, she said quietly. The guest suite has. We'll share a room. Her tone brooked no argument. Ryan nodded, understanding the subtext. She didn't trust him yet. Didn't trust this situation. Fair enough. As his housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, fussed over getting Caleb settled with snacks and cartoons, Ryan noticed Julia's purse sitting on the kitchen counter. A corner of white paper peeked out from the zippered compartment. What's that? He nodded toward the envelope. Julia's face went pale. Nothing. Just junk mail. But her hands trembled as she tried to shove it deeper into her bag, and Ryan's business instincts kicked in. In boardrooms, you learn to read tells the nervous gestures that revealed hidden truths. Julia. His voice was gentle but firm. What aren't you telling me? It's nothing, Ryan. I can handle. The way you've been handling everything else? The words came out harsher than intended. Collapsing from exhaustion. Working yourself to death while our son asks strangers for help. The accusation hit its mark. Julia's defiance crumbled slightly, revealing the fear underneath. Someone's been watching us. The admission came out barely above a whisper. Ryan went very still. Show me. The letters were spread across his dining room table like evidence at a crime scene. 3 envelopes, each containing escalating threats written in block letters that screamed menace. I've been watching you. You can't hide forever. Your boy is beautiful. He looks just like you. You think you're safe in your little world. You're not. I know where you work, where he goes to school. It's time to pay for what you did. Ryan read each one twice, his fury building with every word. Someone had been stalking his family for weeks. Someone had been watching Caleb, learning his routines, threatening the 2 people who mattered most in the world. When did these start? His voice was deadly calm. 3 weeks ago. Right after Caleb started kindergarten, Julia wrapped her arms around herself. At first, I thought it was a prank, or maybe someone else's mail got mixed up. But you don't think that anymore. The second one mentioned Caleb specifically, described what he was wearing that day. Someone's been watching us, Ryan. Really watching. Ryan was already pulling out his phone, dialing his head of security. Marcus, I need the full team at the penthouse, now, and bring the surveillance equipment. Ryan, what are you doing? What I should have been doing all along, protecting my family. The word family hung in the air between them, loaded with 6 years of absence and longing. Within an hour, Ryan's security team had transformed his pristine penthouse into a command center. Laptops, surveillance monitors, and communication equipment covered every surface. Marcus Webb, his head of security, studied the letters with the intensity of a man who'd spent 20 years in military intelligence. The handwriting's deliberately disguised, Marcus said, but there are patterns. The way he forms his R's, the spacing between words. This person has some education, not random street harassment. Any thoughts on who? Ryan asked. Could be connected to your business. Hostile takeover target seeking revenge. Disgruntled employee. We've seen this before with high-profile executives. Ryan nodded, but something nagged at him. The letters felt too personal, too focused on Julia specifically. His business enemies would target him directly, not through a woman they'd never heard of. Julia sat on the couch with Caleb, who was building elaborate towers with the blocks Mrs. Chen had found in storage toys. Ryan had never known he owned, probably purchased by some assistant for a charity donation. "Mummy, why are all these people here?" Caleb whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "They're friends of Ryan's. They're making sure we're safe." Caleb accepted this with the easy trust of childhood, but Ryan caught the way Julia's hands shook as she smoothed his hair. Marcus approached with a tablet. "I sent a team to interview people at your workplace, your son's school, the neighborhood. Your boss at the diner mentioned something interesting." Julia's head snapped up. "What did Tony say?" "That a man's been coming in regularly for the past month. Always sits in your section. Asks specific questions about your schedule, your life. Pays in cash, never leaves a name." The blood drained from Julia's face. "Someone's been watching me work." "Gets worse," Marcus continued. "We found these in the dumpster behind your building." He showed them the tablet screen photographs taken with a telephoto lens. Julia walking to work. Caleb playing in the small courtyard behind their apartment building. Julia shopping for groceries, unaware she was being hunted. "Whoever this is has been documenting your routines for weeks. They know where you work, where Caleb goes to school, what time you leave each morning." Ryan felt something dark and primal rise in his chest. Someone had been stalking his son, planning God knew what, while he'd been obliviously closing deals 40 miles away. "I want around-the-clock protection," he told Marcus. "Full surveillance on the apartment building, the diner, Caleb's school, and I want this bastard found." "Already on it, but Ryan," Marcus glanced at Julia, then back. "This doesn't feel like your usual corporate threat. The focus on the woman, the child, it's too intimate, too personal." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying this might not be about you at all. This might be about her." The words hung heavy in the suddenly quiet room. All eyes turned to Julia, who had gone very still. "Julia?" Ryan's voice was gentle but insistent. "Is there someone from your past who might want to hurt you?" I don't know. I can't think of anyone who would." She trailed off, doubt creeping into her voice. "Ex-boyfriend? Someone you had a falling out with? Anyone who might have felt wronged somehow?" Julia shook her head, but Ryan could see the wheels turning behind her eyes, some memory stirring, some connection she wasn't ready to admit. Caleb looked up from his blocks, sensing the tension. "Mummy, are you scared?" The innocent question broke something in Julia's carefully maintained composure. Her eyes filled with tears she'd been holding back for weeks. "A little, sweetheart, but we're safe now." Caleb nodded solemnly, then walked over to Ryan with the serious expression children wear when they're trying to be grown up. "You'll protect us, right? Like superheroes do?" The question hit Ryan square in the chest. This little boy, his son, was looking at him with absolute trust, believing that daddies could fix anything, stop any monster, make the world safe again. Ryan knelt to Caleb's eye level. "I promise you, buddy, nothing's going to hurt you or your mom. Not while I'm here." "Good," Caleb said matter-of-factly, "because Mommy cries sometimes when she thinks I'm sleeping, but she doesn't have to anymore, right?" The observation shattered what was left of Ryan's composure. Julia had been carrying this fear alone, trying to be strong for their son while someone hunted them both. Never again. "Right," Ryan said firmly. "She doesn't have to cry anymore." As Caleb returned to his blocks, satisfied with this adult promise, Ryan caught Julia's eye across the room. Her expression was complicated gratitude mixed with stubborn independence. hope warring with old hurt. They still had so much to work through, 6 years of silence, of pride, of choices that couldn't be undone. But right now, none of that mattered. Someone was threatening his family, and Ryan Cole had spent 6 years learning exactly how ruthless he could be when something mattered to him. This time, he wouldn't let them down. Later that evening, at the penthouse, "It's like a castle in the sky," Caleb whispered, pressing his face against the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sparkled below them, 40 floors of distance transforming Manhattan into a glittering toy set. Julia stood in the doorway of what Ryan had called the guest suite, a space larger than her entire Brooklyn apartment, complete with a king-sized bed, marble bathroom, and walk-in closet that could house a small family. Everything was pristine, expensive, and absolutely nothing like home. "We can't stay here," she said quietly. Ryan looked up from where he was crouched beside Caleb, both of them watching helicopter lights blink across the darkening sky. "Why not?" "Because this isn't us. This isn't who we are. It's who I am." Ryan's voice was careful, measured. "And you're my—" He stopped himself, glancing at Caleb. "Your family. This is where family belongs." The word family still felt foreign between them, loaded with 6 years of absence and might-have-beens. But watching Ryan patiently answer Caleb's endless questions about the buildings below, Julia felt something crack inside her chest, a wall she'd built to protect herself from exactly this kind of hope. Dinner was an exercise in careful politeness and emotional landmines. Mrs. Chen had prepared what she called a simple family meal: rosemary roasted chicken, garlic, mashed potatoes, vegetables that probably cost more per pound than Julia made in a day. The dining table could seat 12, but they clustered at one end, trying to make the cavernous space feel intimate. Caleb swung his legs from the high-backed chair, chattering between bites. "Ryan, how many floors does your building have? How high up are we? Can we see the whole world from here?" 42 floors, Ryan answered patiently. "We're on the 40th floor, and not quite the whole world, but a good chunk of New York City." "Do you own the whole building?" "Caleb," Julia warned gently, "don't ask personal questions." "It's okay." Ryan's eyes met hers across the table. "And yes, buddy, I own the whole building." Caleb's eyes went wide. "Wow, you must be really, really rich." "Caleb," Julia's cheeks flamed with embarrassment. But Ryan just chuckled, the first genuine laugh she'd heard from him in 6 years. "I guess I am. Does that bother you?" Caleb considered this with 5-year-old seriousness. "Nope, as long as you're nice to Mommy." The innocent declaration hung in the air like a challenge. Ryan's eyes found Julia's again, and she saw something there that made her pulse quicken: regret, longing, and a promise she wasn't sure she could trust. "I'm going to try my best to be nice to Mommy," Ryan said softly. "She deserves that." After dinner, Ryan showed Caleb how the elevator worked, not just the buttons, but the mechanics behind them. They spent 20 minutes in the hallway while Ryan explained counterweights and pulleys in terms a kindergartner could understand. Julia watched from the penthouse doorway, her heart doing dangerous things in her chest. This was the Ryan she'd fallen in love with, patient, thoughtful, willing to get down on a child's level and see the world through wonder-filled eyes. The Ryan who'd once spent an entire afternoon teaching her to parallel park, never once losing his temper when she scraped his bumper for the 3rd time. She'd forgotten that version of him existed. "Want to try pressing the button?" Ryan asked Caleb. "Can I really?" Caleb bounced on his toes with excitement. "Of course, but you have to promise me something first. Promise you'll never ride the elevator without a grown-up. It's a big building, and I want you to be safe." "I promise," Caleb said solemnly, then pressed the button with the reverence of a child being trusted with adult responsibility. When the elevator doors closed and reopened on the same floor, a little magic show just for him, Caleb's delighted laughter echoed through the hallway. "Again, can we do it again?" "Once more," Ryan said. "Then it's bedtime." As they repeated the elevator trick, Julia found herself memorizing the picture they made together, her son's dark head bent close to his father's, both of them grinning at the simple joy of a child's first elevator ride. The word father didn't feel foreign anymore. That scared her almost as much as the stalker did. An hour later, Caleb was finally asleep in the guest bedroom's enormous bed, dwarfed by Egyptian cotton sheets and down pillows. Julia had sung him 3 lullabies and told 2 stories before his eyelids finally stayed closed. She found Ryan in his study, surrounded by laptops and security reports. The desk lamp cast harsh shadows across his face, making him look older, more tired than she remembered. "Thank you," she said quietly from the doorway. He looked up, surprise flickering across his features. For what? For being patient with him, she struggled to find words, for being good with him. Ryan leaned back in his chair, studying her face. "He's an incredible kid, Julia. You did an amazing job raising him." The compliment shouldn't have meant so much. But after 6 years of single motherhood, of wondering if she was enough, of trying to be both parents at once, hearing that she'd done well, felt like absolution. "I tried. I always wondered if—" She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. If what? If he needed more than I could give him? If I was being selfish, keeping him from having a father? Ryan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "You weren't being selfish. You were protecting him. From me, from my choices, from a man who didn't have his priorities straight." Julia stepped into the study, drawn by the vulnerability in his voice. "And now? Now I know what matters." His eyes met hers, and she saw 6 years of regret reflected there. "Now I know what I lost, and I'm never going to lose it again." The words hung between them, heavy with promise and possibility. Julia felt her carefully constructed walls wavering. "Ryan, I know." He stood up, moving closer but not close enough to touch. "I know we have a lot to work through. I know I hurt you, and I know trust doesn't come back overnight. But Julia, seeing you with him tonight, watching you be the mother I always knew you'd be, I remember why I fell in love with you in the first place." Her breath caught. Don't what? Don't make this about us. This is about Caleb, about keeping him safe." "Is it?" Ryan's voice was gentle but insistent. "Because the way you looked at me tonight when I was with him, that wasn't just about safety." Julia's cheeks flushed. He was right, and they both knew it. Watching him with Caleb had awakened feelings she'd buried so deep she'd forgotten they existed. "It doesn't matter what I felt," she said quietly. "People don't change, Ryan." "Not really." "I have." "Have you? Or are you just saying what you think I need to hear?" The question hit its mark. Ryan's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Julia saw the old him, the man who controlled boardrooms with ruthless precision. Then his expression softened. "Ask me in a month. Ask me in 6 months. Ask me in a year. I'll prove it to you, Julia, however long it takes." The sincerity in his voice made her chest ache with dangerous hope. This was how it had started before his intensity, his absolute certainty, the way he made her believe in impossible things. "I can't risk it," she whispered. "I can't risk him getting hurt if you change your mind again." "I won't. You don't know that. 6 years ago you were sure about us too, until you weren't." The words hit home. Ryan flinched, and Julia immediately regretted the cruelty of the truth. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did, and you're right." Ryan's voice was quiet but steady. "I made promises before that I didn't keep. I chose work over love, success over happiness. I was wrong, Julia, about everything." Tears stung her eyes. "It doesn't change anything. It changes everything. Because this time, I know the cost of losing you." The conversation was getting too intense, too raw. Julia took a step backward, bumping into the doorframe. "I should get some sleep. Tomorrow we need to figure out arrangements." "Julia," Ryan's voice stopped her. "Whatever happens between us, whatever you decide about us, I want to be part of his life. I want to be his father." The word father again, but this time it didn't scare her quite as much. "We'll figure it out," she said softly. As she walked back toward the guest room, Julia caught her reflection in the darkened windows. For the first time in 6 years, she looked like a woman instead of just a survivor. That scared her most of all. 3 days later, Ryan's study. "This one's called a night," Ryan explained, holding up the carved chess piece. He moves in an L shape, 2 squares one way, then 1 square sideways. Caleb frowned in concentration, his small fingers tracing the horse's mane. Why can't he just go straight like the castle? Because sometimes the best way to get where you want to go isn't the obvious path. Ryan hadn't planned to teach his son chess, but when Caleb had wandered into his study that morning, curious about the antique set on the side table, something had shifted in Ryan's chest. His own father had taught him to play at 6 years old, one of the few good memories from a childhood filled with disappointment. "Can I move him?" Caleb asked. "Of course, but remember, think 3 moves ahead," Caleb finished solemnly. "You already told me that part." Ryan smiled despite himself. The kid was sharp, absorbing information like a sponge, just like Julia had always been, connecting dots others missed. Caleb moved the knight with careful precision, then looked up expectantly. "Did I do good, Dad?" The word hit Ryan like lightning. Dad. Not Ryan, not the man from the phone, but Dad, casual and natural, as if Caleb had been saying it his whole life. Ryan's throat closed. He managed a nod, not trusting his voice. Caleb didn't seem to notice the slip, already focused on Ryan's next move. But from the doorway, Julia had heard everything. Ryan caught her reflection in the window, her hand pressed to her mouth, eyes bright with unshed tears. When he looked back, she was gone. That evening, Ryan found himself in unfamiliar territory, reading bedtime stories. "This one," Caleb declared, pulling a worn book from the small collection Julia had brought from their apartment. "It's about a dragon who doesn't want to be scary anymore." Ryan settled onto the edge of the enormous bed, Caleb curled against his side like it was the most natural thing in the world. The book was well loved, pages soft from countless readings, margins decorated with Caleb's crayon marks. "Mommy does different voices for all the characters," Caleb informed him seriously. "You have to do voices too. I don't know if I'm very good at voices." "That's okay. Mommy wasn't good at first either, but she got better because she practiced." The simple faith in his voice made Ryan's chest ache. This child, his son, believed he could do anything, be anything, simply because fathers were supposed to be capable of magic. "Don't let him down," Ryan told himself. "Whatever else you mess up, don't let him down." He started reading, attempting what he hoped was a dragon voice. Caleb giggled at his efforts, offering helpful suggestions. "More growly, dragons are more growly than that." By the time the reformed dragon had made friends with the village children, Caleb's eyelids were heavy, but he fought sleep, clinging to this precious time with his newly discovered father. "Ryan," his voice was drowsy, muffled against Ryan's shoulder. "Yeah, buddy? Why does Mommy cry sometimes when she thinks I'm sleeping?" The innocent question gutted him. Ryan thought of Julia in their Brooklyn apartment, working herself to exhaustion, carrying fear alone while their son listened to her tears through thin walls. Sometimes grown-ups get worried or sad, and crying helps them feel better. Are you going to make her not cry anymore? The weight of that hope, a 5-year-old's absolute belief that daddies could fix everything, settled on Ryan's shoulders like armor and chains combined. "I'm going to try my best," Caleb nodded, satisfied with this promise. Within minutes, his breathing evened out, one small hand still clutching Ryan's shirt. Ryan stayed frozen in place, afraid to move and break the spell. This tiny person trusted him completely, needed him in ways Ryan had never experienced. The responsibility was terrifying and wonderful, and absolutely worth every sacrifice he'd ever have to make. The next morning, Ryan made a decision that would have shocked his board of directors. "Want to come to work with me today?" he asked Caleb over breakfast. Julia looked up sharply from her coffee. "Ryan, you don't have to." "I want to. Besides, the security team will feel better if we're all together." Which was true, but not the whole truth. The whole truth was that Ryan couldn't bear the thought of spending another day in meetings, pretending to care about quarterly projections, when he could be showing his son the world he'd built. Sterling Global's offices had never hosted a 5-year-old before. Caleb's eyes went wide at the marble lobby, the wall of elevators, the way everyone seemed to know his father's name. "This is where you work every day?" Caleb whispered as they rode to the 37th floor. Every day for the past 6 years. It's really big. Too big sometimes. In Ryan's office, Caleb pressed his nose to the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city sprawl below. Look how tiny the cars are. They're like toys. When I first got this office, I used to stand right where you're standing and think about how far I'd come. Where did you come from? Such a simple question, but it opened doors Ryan rarely walked through. A place called Queens. My dad worked in a factory, and my mom cleaned offices at night. We didn't have very much money. Caleb turned from the window, studying Ryan with serious eyes. Is that why you work so hard? To make lots of money? Out of the mouths of babes. I used to think so. Now I'm not sure money is the most important thing. What is the most important thing? Ryan looked at his son, this perfect little person he'd helped create, but never known, and felt the last pieces of his old priorities crumble. Family, he said quietly. Taking care of the people you love. The flowers arrived while they were at lunch. 24 red roses, delivered to the penthouse with a note that made Julia's blood run cold. Beautiful flowers for a beautiful family. See how easy it was to find you. You can't hide behind his money forever. Someone who remembers. Julia's hands shook as she read the words. Someone who remembers. Not a random stalker. Someone from her past. Someone she should recognize but couldn't place. The building's security footage showed the delivery man entering through the service entrance. Average height, baseball cap pulled low, face deliberately obscured. But something about his walk, the set of his shoulders. Julia? Ryan's voice came from behind her. She spun around, finding him and Caleb in the doorway, both wearing matching concerned expressions. We got flowers, she said weakly, handing him the note. Ryan's face went dark as thunderclouds. He pulled out his phone, speed-dialing security. Marcus, we have a problem. While Ryan coordinated with his team, Caleb wandered over to the roses, drawn by their bright color. They're pretty, he said innocently. Who sent them? Julia's heart clenched. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that someone wants to hurt his family, that the beautiful flowers were really a threat, a promise of danger to come? Someone who knows Mommy from before, she said carefully. From before me. From a long time ago, sweetheart. Caleb nodded solemnly, then surprised her by taking her hand. Don't be scared, Mommy. Dad will protect us. Dad. He'd been saying it all day, as natural as breathing, and despite everything, the fear, the uncertainty, the chaos of their situation, hearing it made Julia's heart flutter with dangerous hope. Ryan finished his call and came back to them, his face grim. Security's reviewing all footage from the past week. Building management is implementing new protocols. No deliveries without verification. It won't matter, Julia said quietly. If he could find us here, he can find us anywhere. Not anywhere. Here, with me, with my security team. You don't understand. Julia's voice cracked. This isn't just some random stalker. The note says, he remembers. Someone from my past is doing this, and I can't even figure out who. The confession hung in the air like smoke. Ryan stepped closer, his hand finding her shoulder. Then we figure it out together. Whatever happened before, whoever this is, you don't have to face it alone anymore. Julia looked at him, then at Caleb, who was watching them both with the perceptive eyes of a child who understood more than he should. For 6 years, she'd faced everything alone. Raised Caleb alone, made decisions alone, carried fear alone. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to let someone help her fight. The next morning, Ryan's study. Marcus Webb spread the investigation files across Ryan's desk like pieces of a puzzle finally coming together. Security footage, background checks, financial records, all pointing to a name that made Julia's face go white as paper. David Preston, Marcus said grimly. 31 years old, lives in Boston, works as an IT consultant. And according to these records, he's been tracking Julia Carter for the better part of 6 years. Julia sank into the leather chair across from Ryan's desk, her hands trembling. David, she whispered. Oh God, it's really him. You know this guy? Ryan's voice was dangerously quiet. High school, we We dated senior year. Julia's voice was barely audible. I thought I'd left all that behind when I moved to New York. Marcus pulled up a photograph on his tablet, a thin man with sandy hair and pale eyes that held an unsettling intensity. Is this him? Julia nodded, unable to speak. Ryan studied the image, memorizing every detail of the face that had been terrorizing his family. Tell me about him, Julia. Everything. The story came out in broken pieces, like glass being carefully extracted from an old wound. David was intense, possessive. At first I thought it was romantic the way he wanted to spend every minute with me, how he'd get jealous if I even talked to other guys. Julia's voice grew steadier as she talked, as if speaking the truth was giving her strength. But it got worse senior year. He started following me, showing up places I hadn't told him I'd be, going through my things, my phone, my locker. Ryan's hands clenched into fists. What happened? I tried to break up with him after graduation. He didn't take it well. He kept calling, leaving gifts, showing up at my job. When I told him I was moving to New York for college, he said he'd follow me anywhere. That's when you got the restraining order? Marcus asked, consulting his files. Julia nodded. My parents insisted, but David never respected boundaries. The order just made him more creative about how he stalked me. Creative how? Fake social media accounts, having flowers delivered with no name, following me from a distance so he could claim it was coincidence. If anyone caught him, Julia's voice cracked. Moving to New York was supposed to be my escape, a fresh start where he couldn't find me. Ryan felt something cold and murderous settle in his chest. But he did find you. Not right away. I was careful for years, used my maiden name, stayed off social media, paid for everything in cash. I thought I was safe. Julia's eyes filled with tears, but when Caleb started kindergarten, I had to put down emergency contacts, medical information, all the normal parent stuff you don't think about. Marcus nodded grimly. School records are public information if you know how to access them. He's been using his IT skills to track you through databases, DMV records, voter registration, school enrollment. How long has he been watching us? The question came out as a whisper. Based on the photographs we found, at least 3 months, maybe longer. Marcus showed them printed surveillance photos, Julia walking to work, Caleb playing at the park, both of them grocery shopping, completely unaware they were being hunted. Ryan's vision went red around the edges. Some stranger had been watching his son, his family, documenting their lives like specimens in a lab. There's more, Marcus continued. We found his apartment in Boston, walls covered with pictures of Julia, going back years. Articles about you, Ryan, printed out and highlighted. He's been researching your relationship, your breakup, building some kind of narrative in his head. What kind of narrative? Ryan asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Marcus pulled out a folder marked with evidence tags. Letters he never sent, dozens of them, all addressed to Julia, all talking about how you stole her from him, how your relationship was a mistake, how he's been waiting for you to mess up so he could rescue her. Julia made a sound like a wounded animal. He thinks I left you to come back to him? It gets worse. The recent letters talk about Caleb, how happy he is that Julia has a son, how he's excited to be a stepfather, how they're going to be the family they were always meant to be. The room went dead silent. Ryan stood slowly, violence radiating from every line of his body. This sick bastard has been fantasizing about raising my son. Ryan, Julia started. No. His voice was deadly calm. No, this ends now. Marcus, I want everything, private investigators, police involvement, whatever it takes. I want this piece of trash found and put away where he can't hurt my family. Already on it. Boston PD has been notified. They're executing a search warrant on his apartment as we speak. But Ryan, Marcus hesitated. There's a complication. What complication? He's not in Boston anymore. According to his employer, he took indefinite leave 3 weeks ago. Same time, the threatening letters started escalating. Julia's face went white. He's here. In New York. We think so. And based on the tone of his recent communications, he's getting desperate. The letters show increasing agitation about you being with Ryan, about Caleb calling another man dad. Ryan felt ice flow through his veins. He's been watching us here. He saw Caleb with me. The flower delivery yesterday wasn't just a threat, Marcus continued grimly. It was reconnaissance. He wanted to see how quickly we'd respond, what our security protocols look like. He's planning something. Julia stood abruptly, pacing to the window. This is my fault. I brought this to your doorstep. I brought danger to Caleb. Stop. Ryan's voice cut through her self-recrimination. This isn't your fault. You were 18 years old, trying to escape an abusive relationship. You did everything right. Did I? Because 6 years later, my son is in danger because of choices I made in high school. Your son is in danger because some sick freak can't accept that you moved on with your life. That's not on you, Julia. That's on him. But Ryan could see the guilt eating her alive, the way she was already planning to run again. To take Caleb somewhere David couldn't follow. The same protective instincts that had made her keep Caleb's existence secret were now telling her that leaving was the only way to keep their son safe. He couldn't let that happen. Not again. We're not running, he said firmly. Ryan, you don't understand. David doesn't give up. He's been obsessed with me for 13 years. Moving, changing names, staying hidden, nothing works. He always finds me. Then we don't hide. We fight. With what? Restraining orders? He's violated 3 of them already. Police reports? He's smart enough to avoid getting caught. Money? Julia's voice turned bitter. You can't buy your way out of crazy, Ryan. Maybe not. But I can sure as hell make it expensive for him to stay crazy. Marcus cleared his throat. There is one option. If we can prove he's violated the existing restraining order by crossing state lines to stalk Julia, it becomes a federal crime. FBI gets involved, real jail time becomes a possibility. Do it, Ryan said immediately. It means Julia has to be willing to testify, to go public with everything. And it means accepting that David might escalate before we can stop him. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Going after David officially meant painting a target on their backs, but doing nothing meant living in fear forever. Julia looked at Ryan, then at the surveillance photos scattered across the desk, images of her son playing, unaware that a madman was watching him, planning to steal him away. What if he hurts Caleb? He won't get the chance, Ryan promised. I swear to you, Julia, on everything I am, everything I have, he will never touch our son. The word our hung in the air between them. Not just Ryan's son, not just Julia's son, but their son. A family worth fighting for. Julia closed her eyes, and when she opened them, Ryan saw his own determination reflected back at him. Okay, she said quietly. Let's fight. But as Marcus began outlining their legal options, none of them noticed the figure watching from the street below, or the new burner phone already dialing a familiar number. The war was just beginning. 2 days later, at exactly 2:47 p.m., the call came while Ryan was in a board meeting, his phone buzzing insistently against the mahogany table. He glanced at the screen, Riverside Elementary, and his blood turned to ice. Excuse me, he told the room full of executives, already standing. Emergency. Mrs. Patterson, the school principal, spoke in the carefully controlled voice of someone trying not to cause panic. Mr. Cole, we need you to come to the school immediately. There's been an incident with Caleb. Ryan was already moving toward the elevator, his assistant scrambling to keep up. What kind of incident? A man attempted to approach Caleb during afternoon recess. Our security guard intervened before any contact was made. But, is Caleb hurt? No, he's physically fine, but he's asking for you and his mother. How quickly can you get here? 10 minutes. Ryan hung up and called Julia, his hands shaking as he pressed her contact. She answered on the first ring. Something's happened at Caleb's school, he said without preamble. David tried to get to him. The sound Julia made wasn't quite human, a keening wail of terror that cut straight through Ryan's chest. He could hear her hyperventilating, struggling to form words. He is Caleb. He's safe. The school stopped it before David got close. But Jules, we need to get there. Now. I can't. I can't breathe, Ryan, I can't. Listen to my voice. Ryan's tone became steady, commanding. The same voice that had closed billion-dollar deals. You're having a panic attack. I need you to breathe with me. In for 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. He talked her through the breathing exercises while his driver raced through Manhattan traffic, sirens wailing. By the time they reached the school, Julia's breathing had steadied, but her face was ghost white, and her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Riverside Elementary had been transformed into a fortress. Police cars lined the street, uniformed officers stationed at every entrance. Ryan's security team had arrived first, coordinating with school officials to establish a perimeter. They found Caleb in the principal's office, sitting in a chair that dwarfed his small frame. His eyes were red from crying, but he launched himself at Julia the moment she walked in. "Mummy, there was a scary man who said he knew you." Julia caught him, holding him so tightly Ryan worried she might hurt him, but Caleb just burrowed deeper into her embrace, seeking the comfort only a mother could provide. "What exactly happened?" Ryan asked Mrs. Patterson, his voice barely controlled. During afternoon recess, a man approached the playground fence. He called out to Caleb specifically, said he was a friend of his mother's, and wanted to talk to him. Caleb, to his credit, didn't approach the fence. We've been teaching stranger safety all year. But he tried to get closer. When Caleb ignored him, the man became agitated. He started climbing the fence, saying he just needed 5 minutes to explain something important. That's when our security guard intervened. Ryan's vision went red. He tried to climb into a school playground. Campus security detained him until police arrived, but Mrs. Patterson hesitated. He had identification, claimed to be a family friend. Without a restraining order specifically naming him in New York State, they had to release him with a warning about trespassing. "A warning?" Ryan's voice was deadly quiet. "I'm sorry, Mr. Cole. The system isn't perfect." Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "We got the security footage. David Preston, positive ID, and there's more." He showed them his tablet grainy footage of David pacing outside the school fence, watching children play. The timestamp showed he'd been there for over an hour before approaching Caleb. He was waiting, Julia whispered, still holding Caleb, watching for his chance. "It gets worse. We found his car parked 3 blocks away. Inside." Marcus paused, glancing at Caleb. Items suggesting he was prepared for a longer interaction. Ryan didn't need clarification. David had come prepared to take Caleb one way or another. "We're going home," Ryan said firmly. "All of us, together." The penthouse felt different now, less like a sanctuary, more like a bunker under siege. Ryan had his security team implement what they called lockdown protocols. Every entrance monitored, every delivery scrutinized, armed guards in the lobby and on the roof. Caleb seemed oblivious to the gravity of the situation, more fascinated by the men with earpieces than frightened by them. But Julia hadn't stopped shaking since they'd left the school. "He was so close," she whispered for the 10th time, sitting on the couch with Caleb pressed against her side. "If the guard hadn't been there." "But he was there," Ryan said firmly. "And David didn't get anywhere near Caleb. This time. What about next time? What happens when he gets smarter, more desperate?" Ryan knelt in front of her, his hands covering hers. "There won't be a next time. I promise you." "You can't promise that. You can't control him. Watch me." The flat certainty in Ryan's voice made Julia look up. She saw something in his eyes that both comforted and terrified her. The same ruthless determination that had built his empire, now focused entirely on protecting their son. "Ryan, what are you going to do?" "Whatever it takes." That night, after Caleb had been convinced to sleep in the master bedroom between his parents, like camping, Ryan had explained, Julia and Ryan sat in the living room, exhaustion weighing heavy between them. "I keep thinking about all the things that could have happened today," Julia said quietly. "All the ways I could have lost him. But you didn't. I almost did. Because of choices I made 13 years ago, my son almost." Her voice broke. Ryan moved closer, his arm sliding around her shoulders. For once, she didn't pull away. "Tell me," he said softly. "Tell me what really happened back then." Not just with David, with us. Why you really left. Julia was quiet for so long, Ryan thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I was disappearing. What do you mean? Into your world. Your success. Your dreams. Your vision of what our life should look like. I loved you so much that I was willing to become whoever you needed me to be. The perfect girlfriend for the ambitious executive. The gracious hostess for your business dinners. The supportive partner who never complained about being alone. Ryan's chest ached. Julia, I looked in the mirror one day and didn't recognize myself. I'd become this polished, empty version of who I used to be. And I realized that if I stayed, if I married you, I'd completely lose who I was meant to be. So you left. I left to find myself again, to remember what I wanted, what I valued, what kind of person I was when I wasn't trying to fit into your world. Julia's voice grew stronger. And when I found out about Caleb, I knew I'd made the right choice. I could give him a mother who knew who she was, even if she couldn't give him everything else. The confession hung between them like a bridge, painful but necessary. I'm sorry, Ryan said quietly. I never realized. You weren't trying to erase me. You were just so focused on building your future that you didn't notice I wasn't in it anymore. Not the real me. They sat in silence, processing 6 years of misunderstandings and missed connections. What about now? Ryan asked carefully. Do you still feel like you're disappearing? Julia considered the question. No, because this time you're seeing me. The real me, scared, stubborn, struggling Julia. Not the perfect version I used to pretend to be. I prefer the real version. Even when she comes with a stalker and a whole lot of baggage. Especially then. Ryan's arm tightened around her. Because the real version is the woman who raised our son to be brave and kind and smart. The real version is worth fighting for. Julia leaned against his shoulder, allowing herself this moment of comfort before the next crisis hit. Outside the penthouse windows, the city sprawled in all directions, 8 million people living their lives, unaware that 40 floors above them, a family was learning how to be whole again. But somewhere in those lights, David Preston was watching and planning, his obsession growing stronger with every passing hour. The war wasn't over, it was just beginning. 2 weeks later, the phone call that changed everything came at 6:23 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. He's in custody, Marcus announced without preamble. Boston PD picked up David Preston trying to board a bus back to Massachusetts. Federal marshals are transporting him to New York as we speak. Ryan sank into his kitchen chair, relief flooding through him like warm water. Beside him, Julia's coffee mug slipped from nerveless fingers, shattering against the marble floor. It's over, she whispered. The stalking charges, plus violating interstate restraining orders, plus the school incident, he's looking at 5 to 10 years minimum. His lawyer's already talking plea bargain. For the first time in weeks, Julia's shoulders didn't carry the weight of constant fear. The knot of tension that had lived in Ryan's chest since this nightmare began finally loosened. Can I tell Caleb he's safe? Julia asked. You can tell Caleb he's safe. 1 month later. No. No, you're supposed to fold the eggs in gently. Julia laughed, covering Ryan's hands with hers as he attempted to make pancakes. Like this, see? You don't want to overmix the batter. Caleb stood on a step stool between them, chocolate chips stuck to his cheeks, systematically eating more ingredients than made it into the bowl. Can I crack the next egg? Absolutely, Ryan said, then caught Julia's warning look. But let's do it over the sink, just in case. Sunday morning pancakes had become their tradition, something that had started by accident when Mrs. Chen had her weekend off and evolved into the highlight of their week. Julia had never expected to find such joy in teaching Ryan to cook, or in watching him discover the simple pleasure of making his son giggle with silly faces while flipping pancakes. Dad, you're getting batter everywhere, Caleb announced with 5-year-old authority. Dad. Ryan still felt his chest tighten every time Caleb said it. 3 months in, and the word never lost its magic. Julia watched them together, Ryan patiently explaining why we flip pancakes only once, Caleb nodding seriously before immediately asking if they could flip them 5 more times anyway, and felt her heart do something dangerous. This was what she'd dreamed of 6 years ago. Not the penthouse or the luxury, but this. Casual Sunday mornings, flour on expensive countertops, Ryan in old jeans and a t-shirt instead of $1,000 suits. "I love you, Dad," Caleb said suddenly, wrapping his syrup-sticky arms around Ryan's waist. Ryan went very still. His eyes found Julia's across the kitchen, and she saw the exact moment those 3 words from their son broke something open inside him. "I love you too, buddy," Ryan said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "More than all the buildings in the city. Even more than your office? Especially more than my office." Julia had to turn away, tears threatening. This was Ryan, learning to be a father in real time, discovering that love multiplied rather than divided, that success meant nothing without someone to share it with. That evening, after Caleb had been tucked into bed with the usual 3 stories and 2 glasses of water, Julia found Ryan on the penthouse balcony, looking out at the city lights. "Penny for your thoughts?" He smiled at the old phrase. "Just thinking about how different everything looks from up here now." "Different how?" "Used to look at those lights and see opportunities, deals to be made, companies to acquire, ways to expand the empire." Ryan was quiet for a moment. "Now I look down there and wonder if there are other fathers missing bedtime stories, other kids asking why their dads work so late." Julia stepped closer, studying his profile in the soft light. "Any regrets?" "About what?" "Slowing down, making different choices. You've missed more meetings in the past month than you probably missed in the previous 6 years. Ryan turned to face her fully. "Julia, I spent 6 years building something that couldn't love me back. You think I regret trading some of that for pancake breakfasts with my son?" The sincerity in his voice made her chest ache with possibility. This was the man she'd fallen in love with, the one who could see past the surface to what really mattered. She'd just forgotten he existed beneath all the ambition. "I'm seeing a therapist," she said suddenly. Ryan's eyebrows rose slightly, but he didn't seem surprised. "How's that going?" "Hard, good, terrifying." Julia laughed shakily. "She's helping me work through everything, David. The years of running, the way I shut you out because I was afraid of losing myself again. And what are you learning? That I'm stronger than I thought, that asking for help doesn't make me weak, that—" She hesitated, then plunged forward. "That maybe I never stopped loving you. I just stopped trusting that you could love the real me." The confession hung in the air between them, loaded with 6 years of careful walls and buried feelings. Ryan stepped closer, his hands coming up to frame her face. "Jules, I fell in love with the real you, the woman who believed in me before I believed in myself, the woman who called me out when I was being an arrogant ass, the woman who was brave enough to walk away when I wasn't giving her what she deserved. Ryan, I never stopped loving you either, not for a single day in 6 years. I just learned to live with the hole you left behind." The admission broke the last of her defenses. When Ryan leaned down to kiss her, Julia didn't pull away. Instead, she melted into him, 6 years of longing and regret and hope, pouring out in a single moment of connection. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, 2 people remembering how to fit together, but as Julia's arms wound around his neck, as Ryan pulled her closer, it deepened into something that felt like coming home. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "What happens now?" Julia whispered. "Now we take it one day at a time. Pancake breakfasts and bedtime stories and figuring out how to be a family. And if I get scared, if I start to feel like I'm disappearing again, then you tell me and we fix it, together." Ryan's thumb traced across her cheek. "I'm not the same man who let you walk away, Julia. I won't make those mistakes again." Looking into his eyes, really looking, Julia saw the truth of it. This wasn't just words or promises meant to win her back. This was a man who'd learned what mattered, who'd chosen love over ambition, who'd spent 3 months proving that change was possible. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay? Okay, let's try. Let's see what happens when we do this right." 2 weeks later, "So, for your birthday party," Julia said, making notes on her tablet while Caleb bounced on the couch between her and Ryan. "You want a dinosaur theme, pizza, and a bouncy castle? And chocolate cake," And can Tommy come? And Parker? And can we have it here so I can show everyone the elevator? Ryan grinned. I think we can manage all of that. Even the bouncy castle on the balcony? Even the bouncy castle on the balcony. Julia watched them plan together, Ryan taking Caleb's requests as seriously as any business proposal, Caleb treating his father like the final authority on all birthday party logistics, and felt her heart expand with something that felt dangerously like forever. They were doing this, really doing this, building something together that was bigger than the sum of its parts. It wasn't perfect. They still had moments of awkwardness, still were learning each other all over again. But it was real, and it was theirs, and for the first time in 6 years Julia believed in happy endings. "Mom," Caleb said suddenly, "are you and Dad going to get married?" The question caught them both off guard. Julia felt her cheeks flame, while Ryan looked like he'd been hit with a 2x4. That's a very big question, sweetheart," Julia managed. "Because I think you should. Then we'd be a real family." "We're already a real family," Ryan said gently. "Marriage is just a piece of paper. What matters is that we love each other and take care of each other." Caleb considered this with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. "But if you got married, would I get to be in the wedding?" Julia caught Ryan's eye over Caleb's head, and something passed between them, not a promise exactly, but a possibility. A future that neither of them was quite ready to name, but both were beginning to believe in. "If your dad and I ever get married," Julia said carefully, "you would definitely be the most important person at the wedding." "Cool. Can I plan the dinosaur decorations?" "Absolutely." As Caleb launched into detailed plans involving T-Rex centerpieces and pterodactyl streamers, Julia felt Ryan's hand find hers, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture that felt like hope, made tangible. "Do you believe people can really change for love? Drop a heart emoji if you think Ryan deserves a second chance, and don't forget to subscribe if you're enjoying the story. It helps us grow." 6 months later, Central Park. "I don't think I can do this," Caleb said, staring at the bright red bicycle with the kind of terror usually reserved for monsters under beds. Ryan knelt beside him on the grass, one hand steadying the bike. "What if I told you a secret? I was scared the first time I rode a bike too." "Really?" "Really. I was 7 years old, and I was convinced I was going to crash into every tree in the park." Caleb giggled. "Did you crash into any trees?" "Just one. But it was a very small tree, and it didn't hurt much." From her spot on the park bench 30 feet away, Julia watched this exchange with a heart so full it felt like it might burst. 6 months of Sundays in Central Park, first just walking, then flying kites, and now this. Ryan teaching their son to ride a bike with the same patient determination he'd once brought to hostile takeovers. "Okay," Caleb announced. "But you have to promise not to let go." "I promise," Ryan said solemnly. "I won't let go until you tell me to." What Julia couldn't see from her bench was the way Ryan's hands trembled slightly as he gripped the bike seat, or the small velvet box he'd transferred from pocket to pocket 17 times that morning. She couldn't hear his racing heartbeat or the speech he'd been rehearsing for weeks. But Caleb, with the intuitive wisdom of children, sensed something. "Dad, are you nervous?" Ryan's step faltered. "Why would you think that?" "Because you keep looking at Mommy like you want to tell her something important." Out of the mouths of babes, "Maybe I do want to tell her something important." "Is it a good something or a scary something?" "I hope it's a good something." Caleb considered this with 6-year-old seriousness. "Mommy likes good somethings, especially when they make her smile the real way." "The real way?" "You know, when her eyes get crinkly and she looks like she's going to laugh, but also maybe cry a little bit." Ryan's throat tightened. This kid, his son, understood his mother's happiness better than most adults understood anything. "Think you're ready to try pedaling?" Ryan asked. "Will you still hold on until you tell me not to?" It took 47 attempts, 3 scraped knees, and 1 near collision with a jogger, but finally, miraculously, Caleb was flying across the grass on 2 wheels, Ryan jogging beside him with one hand barely touching the seat. "I'm doing it! I'm doing it!" Caleb's voice carried across the park, pure joy distilled into sound. "You're doing it, buddy. Can you let go now?" I think I'm ready. Ryan's hand fell away, and for 10 perfect seconds, Caleb rode solo, wobbling but determined, grinning like he'd conquered the world. When he finally crashed into a soft patch of grass near Julia's bench, he was laughing too hard to care about the tumble. Did you see me, Mummy? I saw everything, Julia said, pulling him into her arms. You were amazing, sweetheart. Dad taught me, and he only let go when I said to. Julia's eyes met Ryan's over Caleb's head, and something passed between them, pride, gratitude, and a deeper understanding of what partnership really meant. Dad? Caleb wiggled out of Julia's embrace. Now can you ask Mommy the important thing? Ryan's face went blank. What important thing? The one that's making you nervous. The one that might make Mommy do the crinkly eye smile. Julia looked between them, curiosity replacing confusion. What's going on? Ryan ran his hands through his hair, suddenly looking less like a billionaire CEO and more like a nervous college kid. I had a whole speech planned, very smooth, very romantic. Caleb just completely derailed it. Good, Julia said, settling back on the bench. Smooth speeches make me nervous. Just talk to me. Ryan sat beside her, Caleb immediately climbing onto his lap with the casual ownership of a child who'd never doubted his welcome. 6 months ago, you said something that stuck with me, about wanting to build something that matters, not just something that makes money. Julia nodded, remembering. I've been thinking about that a lot, about what legacy I want to leave, what I want Caleb to remember about his father when he's older. Ryan, let me finish, please. Ryan's voice was gentle but insistent. I want to start a foundation, not just write checks to existing charities, but build something new, something that helps single mothers like you, were women who are working 2 jobs and raising kids alone and trying to be everything to everyone. Julia's breath caught. A foundation? The Carter Sterling Family Foundation. Your vision, my resources. Daycare for working mothers, job training programs, emergency financial assistance, legal help for women escaping bad situations. Tears were already starting in Julia's eyes. Ryan, but here's the thing, I don't want to just fund it. I want to build it with you. As partners, real partners, where your voice matters as much as mine, where we make decisions together. Are you asking me to work with you? I'm asking you to dream with me, to take everything you learn from struggling alone and use it to make sure other women don't have to struggle the same way. Julia was quiet for so long that Ryan began to panic. Maybe he'd misread everything. Maybe she wasn't ready for this kind of commitment, this kind of partnership. Then she started crying, not sad tears, but the overwhelmed tears of someone whose deepest dream had just been offered to her on a silver platter. You want me to be your partner, she said wonderingly. In everything. The foundation, raising Caleb, building whatever this thing between us is becoming. What about marriage? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Ryan's smile was soft, understanding. Ask me again in a year, when we've built something together. When you're sure I won't try to take over, won't try to make you disappear into my version of what our life should look like. The answer was so perfect, so exactly what Julia needed to hear, that she started laughing through her tears. You really have changed, haven't you? Becoming a father changes a man. Loving you, really loving you, not just the idea of you, changes everything. Caleb, who had been watching this exchange with the fascination of a child witnessing adult emotions he couldn't quite understand, suddenly threw his arms around both of them. Are you happy crying, Mommy? Very happy crying, baby. Does this mean we're going to help other mommies who don't have daddies? That's exactly what it means, Ryan said. Good. Because Tommy's mom at school looks sad sometimes, and maybe we could help her not be sad. Julia buried her face in Caleb's hair, overwhelmed by the generosity of her son's heart, by the perfection of this moment. By the way, Ryan had seen exactly what she needed before she'd even known it herself. So, what do you say? Ryan asked quietly. Partners, partners, Julia whispered. Caleb wiggled out of their embrace and ran in a wide circle around their bench, arms spread like airplane wings. We're going to help people. We're going to help people. His joy was infectious, pure, and uncomplicated in the way only children could manage. Julia watched him spin in the afternoon sunlight and felt her heart settle into a new shape, bigger somehow, more hopeful. "You know what this means, don't you?" she said to Ryan. "What?" "Caleb's going to want to help plan every aspect of the foundation. He'll have opinions about the name, the logo, probably the office furniture." Ryan grinned. "I'm counting on it. Kid's got good instincts. He gets that from his father. He gets everything good from his mother." They sat in comfortable silence, watching Caleb chase pigeons and make friends with other children at the playground. The late afternoon sun painted everything golden, and for the first time in her adult life, Julia felt like she was exactly where she belonged. "One more thing," Ryan said suddenly. "What now?" "Caleb asked me yesterday if we were going to give him a little sister." Julia's eyes went wide. "What did you tell him?" "That babies don't work on a timeline, but if his mom was up for it someday, I'd be honored to expand our family." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility and promise. "Someday," Julia said softly, "when we're ready, when we've built our foundation and proven we can do this partnership thing." "Someday," Ryan agreed. In the distance, Caleb's laughter echoed across the park as he finally mastered the bike, riding in wobbly circles and calling for them to watch. They were watching. They were always watching now, these two adults who had found their way back to each other through the pure love of a child who deserved the world. And they were going to give it to him one family at a time. 6 months later, at the Carter Sterling Foundation office, "Mrs. Rodriguez, this is Julia Carter, our co-founder," Ryan said, gesturing to the woman sitting across from them at the conference table. "Julia's going to walk you through our comprehensive support program." Julia smiled warmly at Maria Rodriguez, a single mother of 3 whose story was heartbreakingly familiar. Working double shifts at a hospital, falling behind on rent, trying to keep her kids in school while managing an abusive ex-husband who drained their bank accounts. 6 months ago, Julia would have been sitting on the other side of this table. "The emergency fund can cover your rent for 3 months while you get back on your feet," Julia explained. "But we also want to set you up for long-term success. Our job training program can help you transition from housekeeping to medical administration, better hours, better pay, and it uses skills you already have." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "You would really do all that? For someone you don't even know?" "Because we know exactly how hard you're fighting," Julia said quietly. "I was a single mother too. I know what it feels like to choose between groceries and electricity bills." Ryan watched Julia work, patient, empathetic, turning bureaucracy into humanity. This was what he'd dreamed of when he'd proposed the foundation, but seeing it in action still took his breath away. They'd helped 17 families so far, 17 women who no longer had to choose between feeding their children and keeping a roof over their heads. 17 success stories that started with someone believing they deserved better. "There's one more thing," Ryan added as they finished the paperwork. "Our childcare program has openings at the center downtown. Your kids would be safe, fed, and helped with homework while you're at work or in classes." Maria's composure finally cracked. "I've been so scared," she whispered. "So scared I was failing them." Julia reached across the table, covering Maria's hand with her own. "You're not failing anybody, you're fighting. And now you don't have to fight alone." That evening, Julia found Ryan in their home office, their office now, where foundation business mixed with family photos and Caleb's artwork covered every available surface. "Good meeting today," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "You were incredible with Maria. The way you made her feel seen, not judged." "That's because I was her 2 years ago." Julia opened her laptop, pulling up the foundation's quarterly report. "Speaking of which, Channel 7 wants to interview us both next week. About the personal story behind the foundation." Ryan looked up sharply. "You comfortable with that?" It was a question he asked every time media opportunities arose, always checking, always making sure Julia felt like an equal partner, not just a sympathetic backstory to his philanthropy. "I think so. Our story might help other women realize they don't have to stay in impossible situations." "And Caleb? He's excited about being on TV. He wants to wear his dinosaur tie." Ryan laughed. Their son had developed strong opinions about appropriate interview attire, most of which involved dinosaurs in some form. "How's the degree coming?" Ryan asked, nodding toward her textbook-covered desk. "2 more semesters." Julia's voice held quiet pride. "Social work, with a concentration in family services. I figure if we're going to help people, I should know what I'm talking about." "You already know what you're talking about. The degree is just going to make you unstoppable." The compliment sent warmth through Julia's chest. Ryan had a gift for making her feel capable, intelligent, valued, not despite her struggles, but because of how she'd overcome them. "Caleb's asleep," she said, changing the subject. "Barely made it through 2 stories before he was out. Soccer practice wore him out. Did you see that goal he scored? I saw you cheering louder than all the other parents combined. He's got natural talent, and your determination. Your competitiveness." They smiled at each other across the desk, this easy back and forth that had developed over months of really getting to know each other again. Not as the people they'd been 6 years ago, but as the people they'd become. "Dinner tomorrow night?" Ryan asked. "Just us?" Mrs. Chen already said she'd watch Caleb. "Where are we going?" "That little Italian place in the village, the one where they don't care if we spend 3 hours talking." Julia's pulse quickened. Their date nights had become sacred time to reconnect as adults, as partners, as 2 people falling in love all over again, but with better communication skills. Sounds perfect. 2 weeks later, Foundation Daycare Center. "And this is where we do art projects," Caleb explained to the group of children following him around like he was a tour guide. "Yesterday I made a dragon, but Tommy made a princess dragon, which was even cooler." Julia watched from the doorway as their 6-year-old son, who'd never had siblings, effortlessly became a big brother to every child in their care. He helped younger kids with puzzles, shared his snacks without being asked, and somehow remembered everyone's names within minutes of meeting them. "He's a natural," commented Linda, the daycare director. "Some kids are just born nurturers. He gets that from his mother," Ryan said, appearing beside Julia with coffee for both of them. "And his confidence from his father." They stood in comfortable silence, watching Caleb teach a shy 4-year-old how to build block towers that wouldn't fall down. This was what they'd built together, not just a foundation that helped families, but a place where their own family could thrive. "Julia?" Ryan's voice was thoughtful. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "How would you feel about expanding our family?" The question she'd been expecting for months still caught her off guard. Not because she hadn't thought about it, but because she'd been thinking about it so much. "You mean another baby?" "I mean, I love watching Caleb with these kids. I love seeing him be a big brother, and I love the idea of creating another little person who's half you and half me." Julia's heart did something complicated in her chest. "The timing would be crazy. The foundation is just getting established. I'm finishing school. The timing will never be perfect. But we're in a good place, stable, happy. And Caleb's been not so subtly hinting about wanting a little sister. He asked me yesterday if babies grow in gardens or if we have to order them online." Ryan nearly choked on his coffee. "What did you tell him?" "That babies happen when 2 people love each other very much and decide they're ready for their family to grow." "And are we ready?" Julia looked at Caleb, now reading a picture book to 3 rapt toddlers. His voice animated as he did different character voices the way Ryan had taught him. She thought about their Sunday morning pancake breakfasts, their evening walks in Central Park, the way Ryan never missed bedtime stories even when work ran late. "Ask me again next month," she said quietly. "After the foundation gala, after my finals are done, after we've had time to really think about what adding another person to our chaos would mean." "Fair enough." Ryan's arm slipped around her waist. "But for the record, I think our chaos could use a little more chaos." Julia leaned into him, watching their son build towers and bridges and friendships with the same generous heart they'd somehow managed to nurture together. "For the record," she whispered back, "I think you might be right." That night, after Caleb had been tucked in with stories about dragons and princesses and babies that might grow in gardens, Julia found Ryan on the balcony again, looking out at their city. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, sliding her arms around his waist from behind. This time last year, I stood out here and felt like I had everything and nothing at the same time. Tonight, 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 I feel like the richest man in New York, not because of the money, but because of you, because of him, because we built something that matters." Julia pressed her cheek against his back, breathing in the scent of his cologne mixed with finger paint from Caleb's art project. "I love you," she said quietly. "I love the man you've become. I love the father you are. I love that you see me as an equal partner in everything we do. I love you too. All of you, the woman who fought her way through 6 years alone, the mother who raised an incredible kid, the partner who makes me want to be better every single day." They stood there wrapped in each other and the promise of tomorrow, while their cities sparkled below and their son dreamed of dragons in the room down the hall. Everything was finally exactly as it should be. Almost. 1 year later, at the Plaza Hotel, the Carter Sterling Foundation's first anniversary gala was everything Julia had never dared to dream of. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across 500 guests who had come to celebrate what they'd built together. Politicians, celebrities, business leaders, and most importantly, the families they'd helped, all gathered in the plaza's grand ballroom. Julia stood at the edge of the crowd, watching Ryan work the room with Caleb glued to his side. Their 7-year-old son wore a miniature tuxedo and carried himself with the confidence of someone who knew he belonged in any room he entered. "You look nervous," came a familiar voice behind her. Julia turned to find Marcus Webb, Ryan's head of security, looking sharp in formal wear. Over the past 2 years, he'd become more than an employee. He was family, the uncle who taught Caleb card tricks and never missed his soccer games. "Good nervous or bad nervous?" Julia asked, smoothing her emerald silk gown, a dress that cost more than her old monthly rent, but made her feel like the woman she'd always been underneath. The kind of nervous that says something big is about to happen. Before Julia could ask what he meant, the lights dimmed and Ryan appeared at the podium, Caleb proudly standing beside him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ryan's voice carried across the ballroom, "a year ago, my partner Julia and I had a simple idea that every family deserves a fighting chance." Julia's heart swelled as he spoke about their work, their mission, their belief that love multiplied when shared. But something in his tone, in the way his eyes kept finding hers across the crowd, made her pulse quicken. "This foundation exists because of a woman who taught me that true strength isn't about what you can take, but what you're willing to give. Julia Carter showed me that the best partnerships aren't about one person leading and another following. They're about two people, choosing to build something together that's bigger than either could create alone." The crowd applauded, but Ryan wasn't finished. "Julia, would you come up here, please?" Her legs felt shaky as she made her way to the stage, the crowd parting like water. When she reached the podium, Ryan took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "A year ago, I asked you to be my partner in building this foundation. Tonight, I want to ask you something else." Julia's breath caught as Ryan dropped to one knee, Caleb practically bouncing with excitement beside them. The ballroom went dead silent. "Julia Carter." Ryan's voice was strong but tender, carrying to every corner of the room. "You are the strongest, most compassionate, most incredible woman I've ever known. You saved me from a life that looked successful but felt empty. You gave me the greatest gift in the world," he glanced at Caleb, "and then you gave me the chance to earn my place in both your hearts." Tears were already streaming down Julia's face. "Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that partnerships built on love can weather any storm?" The ring box appeared in his hand, not ostentatious, not the massive diamond a billionaire might be expected to produce, but a perfect solitaire that caught the light and threw rainbows across the stage. "Yes," Julia whispered, then louder, "Yes." The ballroom erupted in cheers as Ryan slipped the ring onto her finger. Caleb threw his arms around both of them, practically vibrating with joy. "Does this mean I get to be in the wedding?" he asked loudly, making the audience laugh. "You get to be the most important person in the wedding," Julia said through her tears. "Can I still plan the dinosaur decorations?" "Absolutely." 3 hours later, Julia was still floating as they made their way through the plaza's marble lobby. Caleb asleep in Ryan's arms, her engagement ring catching every light they passed. Small ceremony, she was saying, already lost in wedding planning mode. Just family and close friends. Maybe the garden at the penthouse, or Central Park where you taught Caleb to ride his bike. Whatever makes you happy, Ryan murmured, adjusting their sleeping son's weight. Though I should warn you, Caleb has very strong opinions about wedding cakes. He's been researching chocolate fountains. Of course he has. Julia laughed, feeling giddy with happiness and champagne, and the promise of forever stretching ahead of them. They'd made it to the car when Julia's phone buzzed. She almost ignored it. Who could be texting at midnight? But something made her check. The message was from an unknown number. You should have stayed away from him. This isn't over. A friend of David's. The world tilted sideways. Julia's face drained of every drop of blood, her hands beginning to shake so violently she nearly dropped the phone. Jules? What's wrong? Ryan's voice seemed to come from very far away. She handed him the phone wordlessly, watching his expression transform from confused to furious to coldly dangerous. Marcus, Ryan said into his Bluetooth, his security training kicking in automatically. Code red. Possible threat. I need the car secured and a full sweep of the building. Now. Julia sank against the car's leather seats, her perfect evening crumbling around her. I thought it was finished. David's in prison. He can't, but apparently someone else can. Ryan's voice was calm but deadly. Marcus, I want to know everything about David Preston's associates, his cellmates, anyone who might have had contact with him in the past 18 months. Caleb stirred in the seat between them, his eyes opening blearily. Mommy, why do you look scared? Julia forced her voice to steady. Just a little surprise, sweetheart. Everything's okay. But Ryan could see it wasn't okay. Could see Julia retreating into herself, the walls going back up, the old instincts to run kicking in. Hey. His voice was gentle but firm. Look at me. Julia's frightened eyes met his. We'll face whatever comes next together. All three of us. That's what families do. But what if? No what ifs. We're stronger now than we were 2 years ago. We have resources. We have people who care about us. And we have each other. Whatever David's friend thinks he's going to accomplish, he's wrong. Caleb, picking up on the adult tension despite their careful words, reached for both their hands. We're going to be okay, he said with the absolute certainty of a child who'd never known his parents to fail him. Because we're a family now, and families protect each other. The simple wisdom hit both adults like a physical blow. Julia looked at her son, this incredible little boy who'd brought them together and taught them both what really mattered, and then at Ryan, the man who'd learned to put love before ambition, who'd proven that people really could change. She was scared, terrified, if she was honest. But she wasn't running. You're right, baby, she whispered to Caleb. We're going to be okay. Through the car's tinted windows, the city sparkled around them, 8 million people living their lives, pursuing their dreams, fighting their own battles. Somewhere in those lights, a new threat was brewing, someone who wanted to tear apart what they'd built. But here, in this car, with Ryan's hand warm and steady in hers and Caleb's sleepy weight against her shoulder, Julia felt something stronger than fear. She felt love. She felt partnership. She felt the unshakable certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. The ring on her finger caught the streetlight as they drove home through the city that had witnessed their destruction and their rebuilding. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fears, new battles to fight. But tonight, they were exactly where they belonged, together, united, and stronger than any force that might try to tear them apart. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. What do you think this new threat means for their future? Will their love be strong enough to survive whatever comes next? Someone out there wants to destroy the happiness they've fought so hard to build, but Julia, Ryan, and Caleb have something their enemies don't understand. They have each other, and they have the kind of love that transforms people from the inside out. Tell me in the comments what you think will happen to this family. And if this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who believes in the power of second chances, because sometimes love really can conquer all.